Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I do have like a fun video. Hopefully it's gonna be fun for me. I don't know if it'll be fun for you all, but I wanted to do a reading vlog this week. Every now and then I thought it would be fun to do a reading vlog dedicated to reading an author, mostly popular, that I've never read before. And I think it's about time that I pick up this author because they're very popular. They write in my favorite genre and I just hadn't had the chance to pick it up until now. And that author is Sanderson, and I'm gonna read Mistborn, The Final Empire, the first book in the first era Mistborn trilogy. This will be a reading vlog slash discussion review, whatever have you. At the end of this video I will put a timestamp to where you can skip on over if you don't care about seeing like my in the moment, like off the cuff thoughts about what I'm reading. That's totally fine. I hope that I do enjoy this book. I don't typically go into books expecting to dislike books. That's just not the reader I am. I just go in for fun, escapism, that kind of thing. If I don't like this book, I hope that that certain group of people that are found in like every fandom don't find this video. I know they can get very passionate about people who disagree with them on like their favorite property or whatever. Again, not going into this with the intention of disliking this or looking at it with like a hyper critical lens. That's not the thing here. I just want to read a person who has a huge impact in this genre, a person who's been writing in this genre for some time. When I think of like the main contemporary fantasy writers like writing today, I think Sanderson, even if I haven't read him. I don't know too much about this. Most people tend to be kind of like hush on like the plot of this. I also kind of assume it's like one of those plots that unfolds as the story goes on. What I have heard about this book is that it takes place in a world where like the evil sorcerer, warlock, warlord, whatever you want to call him, emperor, has won some sort of conquest, has taken over control of this empire, and has been in control of this empire for like 1,000 years. And we follow a group of characters who are trying to take him down, take down the regime. I don't know specifically, and I also know aspects of the magic system. There are people who can like ingest metals, get powers from that, and there are people who can ingest all metals and get all the powers from that, whatever that means. That's literally all I know. Very excited to start. So again, if you don't care about the vlog aspect, feel free to like skip on over to like the review discussion. That's cool. But if you do care, I will see you in the next clip when I have something to talk about. So I did read the prologue. It's not very long. It only goes up to like page 26. And in general, I do really appreciate one aspect of this prologue. Usually when it comes to prologues in like a chunkier fantasy, I typically, it's not that I don't read it, I do. That'd be weird if you don't read the prologue. When it comes to the prologue, I feel like 9 times out of 10 it kind of just, it goes in one ear out the other, because sometimes authors will introduce like 5 characters. One of those characters might actually be important. Someone is summoning a demon. There's references of like an evil power growing in the background. You don't know where this prologue takes place. The magic is barely explained, if at all, barely touched on. The author references a war that took place like 100 years ago, and you don't know like who was involved and why. Chances are that all this information that is thrown at you in the prologue is gonna get rehashed somewhere down the line in the book. So there's really like, I feel like there's no point at throwing me all of this stuff in like the first 20 pages. All it's gonna do is like confuse me, and I'm not usually a reader that like DNFs, but like I know that there are a lot of people that if they're immediately not vibing with the book based off the first 20 pages, you're gone. Like, and I can't blame them, honestly. At the very least, maybe a prologue could help you get a good grip on the author's writing, but even then, sometimes the authors write their prologue very differently than how they write the rest of the book. I don't get it. It's a choice, I guess, but that's also something that happens that's very weird that I don't like about prologues. But I will say for The Final Empire, this prologue actually gives me something to work with. Like, I feel like it had a purpose, and that purpose was to introduce a certain the ska, the class of people who are treated like garbage. We get introduced to a character who I'm assuming is going to be like the main character or one of our main characters, Kelsier. A decent introduction into the magic. Kelsier is talking about like ingesting some sort of metal and that enhances his senses. He literally eats it from what I can gather, and I guess that's how it works. The setting, the mood, the tone of this world also explained in this prologue. Like I feel like this prologue just was meant to give the reader like the basic building blocks of this book, and I got that. I don't know what the intentions are for every prologue ever written. I don't know how authors go into writing specifically the prologue. I feel like this one definitely had a function in mind. Yeah, definitely had a purpose. It wasn't like vague or too much info too quickly. I even tabbed one of like Kelsier's like quotes that really helped build this character. Again, this just was in the first like 20 pages, so I like that. I just finished like the first 100-ish pages. That does include the prologue, but I think I have like a good sense of like what plot wise we're aiming for, like a general plot if someone wants like to know the specifics. But I got like the whole plan on how they're gonna like plan to like overthrow this Lord Ruler and like his hold over the city, like the main city or whatever. And I also have like a good understanding of like what are the key players gonna be. We just met a certain character's brother and I don't know much about him, but for the most part I know who's like involved with this plan, this heist. It's not really like a heist. Well, yeah, it kind of is, because they're like trying to steal like the Lord Ruler's like money. Let's see. I do appreciate like the straightforwardness of this. If someone was trying to get into a fantasy that had a bit more content, a bit thicker, then I think this might be not a bad place to start, since it is very like, here's what we're gonna do. And it doesn't, I don't want to say hand-holding because that sounds like a negative, but it's not too difficult to understand with a detailed like magic system, which can maybe be confusing for some people. But speaking of magic system, I thought it was explained, or it's been touched on again fairly well. There's this one scene that I thought could have been written so poorly, but it wasn't. It was like this one moment where Kelsier was going from, he's trying to get to this person's home and he was pushing and pulling on metal to get there, and the closest thing that I could like compare to is like Spider-Man going on a web from like place to place, but the way he describes it is like constantly falling and he has to push and pull on like heavier or smaller metals depending on what he's doing. But I thought that was explained well enough that it wasn't like too confusing. Like I personally got it. I appreciated that as well. As far as character goes, I've already liked Kelsier from like the prologue. I thought he was very interesting, and like he's gonna be like an interesting character to follow for sure. But also Vin, though I don't totally buy like her willingness to join this plot. I get that she wants knowledge from Kelsier because he knows a lot, but she's also does have a long history of like not trusting people. So I don't know if her knowledge, her want to know things from him, makes up for, again, years of not trusting people because of whatever history she has with her brother. It's not really going to affect my rating, just something that I noted that wasn't super believable for me. So I'll probably do like a 100-page check-ins if I have something to say. If not, yeah, it's going well. So okay, so hi, I'm around the 200-page mark and it's progressing pretty well. I'm really liking everything I'm reading so far. It's like a silent rebellion, like it's like slow moving parts, which I appreciate that. I've read other books where everything just kind of goes like full force, and while that's fun and entertaining, there's also something to be said about like calculating, putting the pieces together, that kind of thing, which I do like as well. I don't have any like strong opinions. I just mostly have like questions. I guess like the biggest question mark I have right now is like this Lord Ruler guy. I don't know if I've been hyping him up in my head or the way people have talked about the story or what have you, but like I feel like the book is hyping him up to be like this big bad, which I assume he is since he's been in power for so long. But at the same time, the way the book has also described him, I'm kind of just like, is that it? You know, mind you, I haven't met him yet. I'm barely at the 200-page mark, or 200-ish page mark. Still like not fully together character-wise for me. Because on one hand, like, oh, he's had power for so long and he's been able to like hold this region together for so long, but at the same time, is it just his wealth that has gotten him his power, which is very true. Like wealth does get you like a lot of power, but is it just like a money thing? Because right now the only people who really like intimidate me, that I'm like, oh my god, these people are scary, like be wary of them, are the inquisitors. Those people with like the ones, I don't know, the really bad ones that can cause like a lot of damage. There's nothing much more to say apart from that. I will say that some tropes that I've been liking. I like this kind of like joking. I kind of think of him as like a Mona Lisa type character. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm sure there's probably better ways to talk about it, but like Mona Lisa in that they're always kind of smiling and they look like they're kind of telling a joke, but like if you look behind it, there's something more. Like they have like a secret, which is like the definition of like Kelsier. Like he's like joking and like being sarcastic and like he doesn't take things seriously. He definitely does, but like he has like a facade on. I like those types of characters. You also have Vin, who's, it's kind of like one of those pretty women tropes where you like pretend to be something that you're not. Obviously in Pretty Women it's like it's a whole other thing, but in this case she's pretending to be like someone of a higher class, which I like. That kind of infiltrating the massive, or infiltrating the elites. I love that. I don't know if there's gonna be a romance here. I got hints of it, which kind of surprised me, because when it comes to like adult romance, one, I don't expect it from the series, but also when it comes to adult romance, I'm very critical of it, as opposed to like YA or just like your general fantasy romance, because it has to have a purpose. No one's forcing you to put a romance in an adult or a higher outside of YA writing genre age range. And it was quick, so I don't really have much more to say about that. I don't even know if it's actually going to be a romance. I just got hints of it and it kind of took me away, and I was like, oh, that was kind of adorable. We will see how that progresses. Also, sorry if you can hear the AC blasting. Is hot. I live in South Texas. It's hot. It's like 3 in the morning, but I wanted to update you because I am on page 305. Those are my notes. So I'm gonna whisper, but I'm still really enjoying it. This is so fun. Everything's been going really well. Reading wise, but also content wise, like everything's been going too well. Like everything's like falling like dominoes, like perfectly, and I'm getting really anxious. Like shit's gonna go down, like it has to, because then this book will be like anticlimactic if everything just works out perfectly, unless Brandon Sanderson can make a plot with no little to no like actual conflict and make it work. I don't know, but everything's going too well. I'm scared. Like I don't want to pick it up anymore, but I also do before like shit hits the fan. That kind of vibe I'm getting. But other than that, everything's progressing pretty nicely. I do make these kind of tabbed just thoughts right here after like a update or whatever. One of my favorite things in this book so far has been the kind of political scheming that I guess is happening in the background with like these noble families that Kelsier is trying to like manipulate or whatever. I love that shit. That is like one of my favorite aspects in like a high fantasy, is like it doesn't have to be like the king or queen. It could just be like just noble houses like scheming and like trying to like get the one up on someone, but like it's all behind a facade of like manners and like respectability or whatever. It kind of reminded me of Mask of Mirrors by, is it M.A. Carrick or M.R. Carrick? I really love that one. Had a lot of like families scheming against each other. If you have any recs that have a lot of that, please let me know. I guess like the obvious example would be like, I don't know, like Game of Thrones or something. And in the last update, I kind of mentioned how I didn't really get the full power that the Lord Ruler had. Like it hadn't clicked to me. Like I didn't get why he was so powerful and how he accumulated his power and has managed to hold on to it for like so long. Money was apparently a big aspect of that, which again makes sense, but I'm American, so people accumulating power because of how much money they have, like that's like literally like every day that ends with a Y for me, right? But now I can kind of see hints at why he is the person that he is. I also have another theory about Vin and her history. I think it's wrong, so I'm not going to say it out loud and embarrass myself, but if it's right, then I will let you know in some other video. But I have a theory. I'm thinking things. It's probably wrong because I'm not that smart, but you know, whatever. But yeah, I will check in in the next 100 pages if I have something to add. If not, this might be my last check-in before my like formal sit-down discussion. Yeah. Okay, good night. It's 3 in the morning. Bye. So I finished Mistborn, The Final Empire. I really let the last like 200 pages just like ride out. I wanted to like give an update at some point, but like half of the updates that I wanted to give would have just been me like screaming, crying, like very emotional. The last 200 pages really like did it for me, but I want to just discuss the book as a whole before I get into like my final thoughts. If I ever do like long form or like specific dedicated book reviews, I tend to like really focus on the core aspects that make up like usually what's in a fantasy book. So plot, world building, writing, characters, themes, tropes, and like the ending. Usually I do like non-spoilery reviews, but since this is like a very popular book, no one needs another Mistborn review. Like this is gonna have spoilers. Going into this, I truly had no idea of how like epic or grand the story could be. The way that it's been pitched to me in the past and how it was originally starting to like pan out in the beginning of the book, I just thought this was going to be like a heist rebellion type story, which is fine. I've read quite a few of those, but again, I did not know how much would have to go in for this story or this plan to like come to fruition. And when I was thinking about all the plot points and all the aspects of the story that had to be put together to get to the end of this book, it kind of reminded me of those like Rube Goldberg machines. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. If you've seen the film Pee-wee's Big Adventure, there's this giant machine at the very beginning of the film, and it's a bunch of like pulleys and levers and all this kind of stuff, and the whole point of this big intricate machine is to serve him breakfast in the morning. Something so simple. That's kind of what this book reminded me of. Not that the plot itself is like a simple thing to just like overthrow a government and like kill this like evil lord ruler guy. If this book were a machine, it need like 100 parts for it to make sense, whereas other fantasy books, and this is no shade to like other fantasy books because other books can be like simple, I guess. Other fantasy books, for example, I read a lot of fantasy romance, might need like 10 moving parts for the story to make sense, and this one Sanderson put like 50 parts together, or it felt like that anyways, for the story to come to its point. And I really love that. And I think that a lot of people talk about fluff or parts in books that did not need to be there. I truly felt that every aspect of this book that was put in here had its purpose. And I'm also the type of person that I could do with like an extra 50 to 100 pages of just like irrelevant stuff, because I'm that type of reader. I love world building, but I truly think the 530 pages of this book was absolutely necessary. The writing of this book and the writing of any book is like hard for me to talk about. I don't like talking about the writing because I feel like I have like nothing to add to the conversation. You might as well be asking me about like theoretical physics. Like I don't know anything. The best that I can give is that the last 200 pages truly were something else. For the majority of this book, I was like, this is like easily a 4 stars, like I'm good. But the last 200 pages really did it for me, and I really do appreciate how, again, the story started wrapping up the last 200 pages. Sometimes when I read a chunky book, the story wraps up in the last 30 to 40 pages, and that really doesn't feel like super satisfactory to me either. Like I need time for this climax to reach its peak. And I think I mentioned in one of my earlier vlog clips, if you skip that, that's fine, but I think I did talk about how accessible this high fantasy book is as far as like the writing goes and the storytelling. It's not too dense, or it's not very purple prose type. If you are someone, and I don't expect them to be watching this if you haven't already read Mistborn, but I would not mind recommending this to someone who is looking to get into more high fantasy away from YA or something other than like maybe urban or like fantasy romance. I think this would be like a decent place to start. I don't know if this is like the best place to start with Sanderson, but I'm happy with my decision that this was the first book I read from him. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I was definitely looking forward to like the magic, the world, because that's like, if anything, that's what he gets the highest praise on, again, from what I've heard. And this book really made me appreciate the like detailed, or the magic systems that are kind of well explained and crafted and have some sort of logic to them. I am surprised I don't actually read a lot more books with like this kind of detailed magic system. I am a very like detail oriented person. Like there's beauty in the details for me. I love world building. If a book is like 50% world building, I know a lot of people wouldn't like that, but I would love that. So again, I really appreciate this. If anything, the thing that I would critique is just that I'm a very visual person, so sometimes when he would explain certain aspects of the magic, it just wouldn't click to me until I read it like a few times. But again, that's just me because I need to see something, and I am also not the type of reader to picture things in my head when I read, so I needed something visual, or I had to keep reading some of like the stuff like when talking about gold or some of the more special metals. But yeah, that's just me. There was something in this book that could have gone wrong for me, because I've seen other authors do this, and it usually really bothers me. And that is when something has already been established early on in the early like parts of like the world building stage, and then at the end what we were told was a fact is not 100% true. And specifically what I'm talking about is that early on in the book, like the first 100 or so pages, we're told like the limitations, what can and cannot happen in regarding allomancy, and which metals you can and cannot burn and all that kind of stuff. Towards the end of the book, some parts of that kind of are challenged a little bit, but it didn't bother me as much, because given the context, it kind of made sense why it was like, this is true, however, asterisk, if you come across this other thing, allomancy changes a little bit. I didn't mind it as much. I've seen it done in other books, not just fantasy, where an author says this is facts and that's it, and then they change their tune at the end of the book just for like a cool reveal, and that bothers me a lot. If anything, this kind of shows how well he's able to like toe that line of like writer do's and don'ts. And again, this is just what I would consider like a don't for me. Other people might not mind it, but for me, I would have seriously minded it if he had done it any other way. While reading this book, I kind of realized I don't like to pick up heist books or books where there's some sort of elaborate plan for something to happen, because something has to go wrong, and I don't like that, which is a weird statement to say, because something has to go wrong in every book for there to be some sort of conflict. I get that, but at least in a political fantasy, and some parts of this were very political, but at least, for example, in a political fantasy, you don't know like which political enemy might do X or Y, or they might do this or that. But in this, there were some very obvious things that could happen to some of these characters, and some of them did come true. So if anything, the worst part of this book, and again, I still really love this, I'm giving this book a 5 stars, by the way. I don't know if I said that already, but worst part of this was that I so wanted to keep on reading, but like the first 200 pages were going so smoothly for the characters within the context of the story that I was like, something bad's gonna happen, like shit will hit the fan, and I'm not ready for that, because I'm so emotionally invested in Kel and Vin's story. So I didn't want to pick up the book, and that is like the worst feeling ever. I hate when there's something that so clearly is blocking me from reading outside of like, you know, time management or whatever. That's just like my anxiousness relating to the story, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it shows that I was so emotionally invested in like the characters and stuff. But yeah, that was like the worst feeling of reading this book. But since I'm already kind of touching on the characters, we'll start there. Vin, I really liked. I personally love like a reluctant hero, or a hero that you wouldn't expect her to be a hero. I will say that I do wish that there was a little bit more individuality and character to her outside of the plot. I wouldn't know how else to describe her other than she has like the typical hallmarks of a reluctant or an unexpected hero. Like, she's brave when she needs to be, like she's selfless when she needs to be. Like, again, these are all very hero-like qualities, but like other than that, like I don't know the type of person she is. And I feel like Kelsier was a very distinct person, even like outside. If you were to remove him from the story, I feel like I'd have a good grasp on what kind of like person he'd be outside of the context of this book, and I don't really get that from Vin. Like, how do I describe her without using the hero qualities that you would find in a hero? You know what I mean? A more minor character like Breeze, I think, had a bit more personality to him than Vin does. And I'm not saying she's like a shitty character. I wanted more from her, especially considering that she is the main character, things are happening to her and she's just reacting, I guess. I don't know how else to put it. But Kelsier, however, how do I talk about Kel? So if you skip through the earlier vlog clips, you might have missed the way I described Kel and how I don't see a lot of these types of characters, and I don't know the proper like trope or how would you describe them, but I like to think of them as like a Mona Lisa type character, where on the surface they're kind of smiling and it looks like they're joking around with you, but like behind the surface they have secrets, like they're keeping stuff from you, they're scheming. That's what the Mona Lisa looks like to me, and that's what Kel is. And on top of that, you want to have a level of distrust with them, and I did not trust Kel myself fully because I knew that he was keeping secrets, and if you know that someone's keeping secrets from you, you don't want to trust them, you don't want to like interact with them, you're kind of like want to hold them at arm's length. But there's also some aspect of Kel, of the Mona Lisa, that you're also like very attracted to, like they're charismatic, or you're like interested, like you want to be around them, you want to see them, that kind of thing. And I don't see that type of character a lot personally. Even like his own like POV chapters, or where he was like the focus, he was also keeping secrets from us in a way that wasn't like annoying or pretentious. Sometimes authors do that and I hate it. I wanted to keep him at arm's length, but like he like really got to me, and I was right not to freaking trust him because he ruined me. I knew not to trust him, that bitch, but I really do like Kel. Touched on this already, but the last 200 pages really did it for me. The entirety of the book, I could see very clearly why this series might be someone's favorite. There was nothing incredibly wrong with it. The world was great, the plot was fine, like it was easily 4 stars, nothing less than that for the most part. And throughout the middle I was like, you know what, I'll give this like a 4.5. I really like some of the tropes specifically, but the ending really did it for me. The ending pushed 5 stars. This is why I like talking about endings when I do like dedicated reviews, because the ending could really make or break a story for me. And this one just, like, if there's one thing I would have wanted, is throughout the book we're getting hints, little tidbits of what would come in books 2 and 3. I know that this is a trilogy, and then there's like another era. The way this ends kind of makes it seem like you could end the series here and never pick up a Sanderson again if you had no idea who he was, or the publishing, you had no idea about like publishing, all that kind of stuff. You could definitely like end the story here and it would have been fine, because while there were little hints of like what is to come, like there really wasn't like a build up for like the next big bad. Of course I remember, you know, towards the end, the Lord Ruler talking about like, you don't know what you've done, there's something else, whatever. The Lord Ruler has been like the big bad for like 1,000 years. It kind of feels like what could be worse than this, and I did not get a sense of what the worst is to come, if that makes sense. Of course it seems kind of pointless since I know there is more to come. Those are my thoughts on Mistborn, The Final Empire. I am very blown away. I could totally see why this first book on its own could be someone's like one of their favorite fantasy books of all time. You know, the plot on its own, this rebellion to like save the people and like liberate the country and all that kind of stuff, that in itself is not like the most unique story, but definitely like the paths that Sanderson took our characters in order to achieve that was, you know, I'm not saying it's never been done before, but I can see why some people might say he's like the best person to do it, or he's one of the better authors. Of course also the characters really help the story like hit its landing, so I don't know, everything just kind of works so well together in this book. I obviously really enjoyed it. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Mistborn, The Final Empire. I've said it before and I'll say it again, this book doesn't really need anyone to give it a discussion or review, but I just really enjoyed it. I obviously also wanted to document my first experience reading a very well liked but also very important author within fantasy right now. So feel free to talk to me in the comments about anything that I've talked about. I'd love to hear what your thoughts on Mistborn are. No spoilers obviously for the books to come, I haven't read them. I will link all my social medias down below, as well as some far more important links. Feel free to like, dislike, comment, or subscribe, or do neither. It's all cool with me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.